I recently went looking through some of my old renders when I found this image from 2015. Not sure if the glasses were meant to be the ones from Harry Potter, but I thought it would be a good idea to remake this project with the skills I have now, 8 years later. This time in a Harry Potter setting. My initial plan was to create a few books with the glasses on top where there is a letter being written with a feather pen, all lit by a candle. With this idea I put together a collection of reference images in PureRef. In Blender I then started by creating a book cover using a solidify modifier to add some thickness. I then UV'd it and used a texture I got from textures.com. I added geometry for the pages and used a different texture for that, which I plugged into a bump node for additional detail. I added an HDRI and a point lamp which I tinted yellow. The HDRI I toned way down to give it a night moody look. Then it was just a matter of duplicating the book and changing out the texture for a different one. Since I wanted one book to be open, I found a good image of that and used it to create the top pages. Extruding the outer edges down, I created the other pages, later giving it the appropriate texture. Same as before, I created the book cover with a solidify modifier. Since I wanted a feather pen, I looked for good tutorials on how to create a feather. Most videos use the hair particle system, but I instead chose my own method, which was to use an image of a feather and just model the inner stem. For that I used a skin and subsurf modifier. I then projected the image onto the geometry and also removed the black background from the feather. While looking at references, I added the pen tip, gave it a simple metal shader and added some imperfections to the roughness input. I then quickly modeled an ink pot. To add the ink inside, I just duplicated the inner wall, closed the top and gave it a dark blue glass shader. For more details I added a random label and a cork on top. Next up were the Harry Potter glasses. I again found some good reference images and then just modeled what I saw. To create the broken glass, I painted the cracks I wanted with the annotation tool and then roughly traced over it with simple faces. I then added some thickness to them, combined it with the glass and used the intersect knife tool to cut the edges into the geometry. I then had to delete all the inner bits by hand while also closing the holes. Normally you would do that with a Boolean modifier, but for some reason that did not work for me. With most of my assets done, I started assembling the scene. Although quickly noticed that I hadn't made the letter, so I found a good image online and used the import images as planes to get it into the scene. I then went on to make it less flat and boring by especially bringing up the corners. The first test render looked promising, so I added a wooden texture to the ground. Noticing I still need a candle, I started modeling the candle holder, again looking at references. For the candle itself, I remeshed a simple cylinder and then sculpted molten wax on the side. I added a wick and then finished up the candle holder. After some quick UVs, I added a simple texture, giving it a grungy and used look. Fleshing out the scene a bit more, I added a back wall and also some thickness to the desk. Since I thought lighting the whole scene with just one candle would look a bit boring, I added a window to the back, shining a dim blue moonlight through. The light pattern on the desk looked a bit boring, so instead of modeling a more complex window, I found an image online and used Photoshop to isolate the glass parts where the light would shine through. I then used this image to cast a more interesting light pattern. I also added a brick texture to the back and then refined it by modeling out the cracks. The same I did with the wooden desk. To add the candle flame, I just again used an image I found online. Running out some test images, I found stuff I did not yet like and did some more work on them. Especially with the book pages, I was not happy, so I tried multiple different textures and also tried some actual displacement. This did the trick for me. For the book, I found some better looking references, so I redid it mostly from scratch. This took a bit of time but was worth it in the end. The scene still looked a bit empty. Since I thought this whole scene would play nice in a library, I added some more books and a bookshelf in the back. Finally, I added some smaller details and rearranged the scene a bit until I was happy. This scene turned out a bit different than I initially had in mind. Instead of the glasses being in focus like on the original image, the latter now is. Compared to 8 years ago, you can see all the things I have improved on. But one thing that still lacks in both images is the composition. The new one still looks quite messy and there is no good point where the eye is drawn to. So that definitely is a thing I will work on in the future.